Hi there, I'm Ellen from EVPL Oakland, and today we're going to be painting and dyeing fabric using the technique known as Batik. Batik is a resist dye method from Indonesia in which melted wax is applied to cloth in intricate designs using a spouted tool called a canting. Then the fabric is dyed. The wax resists the dye, leaving a design in the original fabric color. While batik from Indonesia uses wax to create the resist, other cultures have used resins, rice paste, whatever's known to that culture. And today we will be using washable gel glue to create the resist. Let's get started. I'm just finishing up tracing my picture onto my fabric, and I cut a wider swatch of fabric than I needed for my project so that I have seam allowance, and so I have plenty of extra fabric around it in case I need to sew it into a garment. And I've centered it on my fabric, and I've just been tracing it. Where did I get my design? Children's printable coloring pages. I thought the butterfly would be a good picture because there are lots of areas for light and dark and places where I could use the glue resist really effectively. You could also look at adult coloring pages or quilting templates online and get some patterns. Before I get started applying the glue to my design, I can't stress enough that you need to practice. Make sure you buy extra fabric. Make sure that you play around with the glue bottle. There are different ways of applying the glue. You can run a seam of glue along your design. If you get into tight corners, you might want to apply it with a paintbrush, just because when areas get tight. As I look at my design, I see right here that I'm probably going to want a really thin strand of glue here, because once it dries, gel glue is really good at holding its form, but it still does settle and spread a little bit. So I'll want to be very, very careful not to put too much glue in those areas. Gluing my butterfly. I just wanted to show you a couple things. So you can see the glue starts to settle and it does spread out while it's drying. I don't have a corner here. I could just kind of spread that out a little bit more. It's a little tacky, but you can still move it around a little bit. So we'll let this dry overnight, and tomorrow I can start to paint. I applied glue to 2 butterflies for filming. So one I'll do in fabric paint and the other in acrylic, and then we'll see how they turn out. This looks like the start of a children's book. Once upon a time, there were two butterflies. I like the way they turned out, but there are some differences in the paint. The top one is the acrylic paint, and I really like how clear the divisions are between the glue resist that's white and the paint. It looks a lot crisper in its design. You can see though that I had some trouble with creating the resist. Some paint came off with the glue, but that's all right. That's kind of the appeal of Batik. It's kind of a free form, or you really don't know how it's going to turn out until you've got the final product. Remember this area here with the dots, we covered the whole thing in black paint, covered up the glue, and when I washed it, the glue came off, taking the black paint with it, and we have some really nice dots here. You can see that you will always see the mistakes you made, but they turn out to be happy mistakes, I think. They turn out to be really nice. I like the finish of the acrylic paint. It's not as rough textured as I had read about in other crafting blogs. They had said that if you're going to use something, if a garment or something's going to be up close to your skin, not to use acrylic paint, but it's not that rough at all. It's a little thicker, but I really like the way this has turned out. The division between the glue and the paint is really crisp, and the paint seems to have gone on a lot smoother. The fabric paint I'm not so happy with. If you can see here, some of the paint is still peeling off even after it's been washed and dried. I even pressed it a little bit, and some of the paint is still peeling off. So that means not all the glue came off as well, so the glue is still peeling off underneath it. It seems a little rougher. The division, the lines aren't as smooth and well defined. I think that means I need to try some more fabric paint Batik and see how that comes out. I think it's just a matter of taste, which kind you really, which type of paint you really want to use. I wanted to show you this piece of fabric because even though I don't demonstrate it here on this film, it is something that I had a lot of fun doing, and I kind of wanted to show you the effect. I was trying to imitate more the traditional type of batik where there are layers of glue and layers of paint and different things are revealed as the glue is washed off. So I put this squiggle pattern on my fabric, this squiggle pattern here originally, and then I put over a layer of blue paint. And I waited the amount of time I needed to, and then I washed it, and so it came up this clear. You can see how clear the white is. The white fabric showed through. So then I applied more glue in more layers, an overall mix of different colors. I've got pink and yellow and green, and there's an aqua over here and some purple here, different areas on top of that glue. And when I wash it off, this is the effect. And I really like the layering. You can see some of the squiggles underneath here where the glue washed off. And then you have some paint on top of the original white resist. You have some paint going on in some squiggles. And so I was trying to imitate more the traditional style of batik where there are different layers of glue and layers of dye or paint. This is done in fabric paint, and it's nice and soft. The texture is really nice. It's not like my butterfly with the fabric paint that was all gummy. So in this instance, the fabric paint worked really well. So that's another thing that you can do, layering different paints and glues to get different effects. my t-shirt. It's been drying for a couple of days because I wanted to try and think of how I'm going to dye this so that the glue doesn't wash off and we won't get our dye resist. So what I think I'm going to be doing is laying the t-shirt flat in a tub and just pouring just enough dye on there so that the t-shirt absorbs the dye, but the glue won't be soaking in a lot of dye. So I'm hoping then the dye will do its work and the glue will do its resist, and we'll get a really cool tee. Here's the t-shirt fresh out of the dye, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I let it sit in the dye for about 5 minutes, and as you saw, I kind of swished it around a little bit, but I didn't want too much motion. I didn't want the glue rings on top of each other because they might stick together. The glue might rub off. I didn't want that to happen. The glue is a little tacky. It was starting to dissolve, and I didn't want it to do that, and then the dye would have come in and there wouldn't have been that dye resist. So I took it out after 5 minutes, and I've just set it here on a towel to let the dye sink into the fabric a little bit better. I'm going to let the glue dry, and then I will wash the t-shirt according to the directions on the bottle of dye. And I kind of like it. As you can see, there's a little bit of a line of demarcation here. This part of the t-shirt was in the dye longer than the shoulders, but you could say that's kind of an ombre effect. I'm going with that. I see here some places where the glue dribbled when I was making the circles. And so you can see there's glue resist where I really didn't want it. But for my first try doing a t-shirt with the glue resist, I think it looks really good. So I'm going to let it sit here for an hour, and then I'll wash the t-shirt and I'll show you what it looks like. And here's the t-shirt fresh out of the dryer. It looks great. It's a lot lighter than the last time we saw it, isn't it? I think I probably could have left the shirt in the dye longer, but I was just afraid that the glue would dissolve and the dye resist would be ruined. But I think I could have left it in a little bit longer now that I see it. The resist turned out really great. I love those circles. Looks really neat. One thing I want to remind you, when you take the t-shirt out of the washer, before you put it in the dryer, check to see if all of the glue has been removed. If not, run it under a faucet, cold water. You can use a butter knife or your fingernail or some kind of blunt object to scrape the rest of the glue off the t-shirt, but it's better to get it all off before you put it into the dryer. Well, here's our final result. I can't wait to wear it. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget, for more DIY and craft videos, take a look at our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. And you can always look at the variety of materials and services that we have to offer at evpl.org.